Welcome to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast, where insights, attitudes, and methods for success get illuminated. Learn what leaders and change workers have done and are doing now to create magnificent futures. We interview great guests who inspire you to overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Be sure you visit our website at self-helpcoaching.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, just relax as you listen. You can do something else, but be ready to make an important note. And let's get started.
The title of this interview is Unlocking Your Subconscious to Master Your Mindset. A very valuable thing. That was from me. That's not the official title. The last part was from me. And our guest is Vincent Infante, a fellow New Yorker, I might add, not just that, Staten Islander. So we already got, and he's Italian, so I'm already liking this guy a lot. But you know, I could like anybody, of course. So we're going to talk about how to reanalyze your subconscious mind and begin to reprogram yourself for success, which is what I'm all about. I love it. Now, Vincent has over 12 years in mental health and has a lifetime of service. He is a master mindset coach, licensed psychotherapist, that's something I'm not, and former fire department of New York firefighter. That's quite a background, then. That is fantastic. I'm an ex-paratrooper, so we're kind of, all right. Currently, he runs his own coaching business that caters to high-profile clients. I like the sound of this guy. I like the cut of his jib. With that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, and others, Vincent Infante.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
You're quite welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for being here. I've interviewed all sorts of people, several other New Yorkers, more than several, but you're the first Italian from Staten Island, and I like that very much.
Well, that's all there is in Staten Island.
and by the way, not all, but that's the bulk of it. Just before the interview, you were saying that your father was a director of Maimonides. I was born at Maimonides. Maimonides is a famous and very important hospital here in Brooklyn for those listening. And it's been around for a long time. And I was born there in 1965, way before Vincent came on the picture, I might add. So that's great. And we were talking about how, we were talking about how we got started in the game, I called it. I had to, as the phrase I used, I think, was wallow in the mire for many years. I'm much older than Vincent. Which is, just a factual description, but and then I got into coaching, neuro-linguistic programming, and personal development, working with clients. This guy went to Farrell High School, a prominent Catholic high school on Staten Island. At 18 years old, he got right into mental health. Wow, man! Let's talk about that real quick. I mean, you really knew what you wanted to do.
Yeah, ever since I was a kid, actually. It's when people used to ask me what I wanted to do, I actually had two professions I always told them I would do. I said, I'm going to be a psychotherapist like my dad, and I'm going to be a firefighter. And so then people would get it, right? They get a little confused. They'd be like, you want to be a therapist in the fire department? I was like, no, I'm going to do both. I'm going to be a therapist and a firefighter.
And are you still in the FDNY?
No, I actually resigned about a year and a half, coming up on about 2 years ago, to pursue my business full time.
Fantastic. I love it, man. So you've got that resume, you got that background and experience. Must be an incredible experience. Listen, it's pretty obvious, at the risk of being obvious, there's something special about a person who runs to danger. Most people run from it, instinctually. We're going to talk about the subconscious mind, right out of the subconscious, flee from danger or fight, right? Fight or flight. And I was an ex-paratrooper. I parachuted into danger. He took a screaming fire truck to danger. But that's something you have to overcome. Well, we're going to get into the subconscious mind and other things. And let's get right into it. What exactly is the subconscious mind?
So the subconscious mind is very interesting. It's something that's always on 24/7, even when you're sleeping. It's a mind that is working in tandem, but also separate from your conscious mind. It's like another part of you. You might have even heard of people referring to their shadow selves. That's kind of hitting on the subconscious mind.
It is a fascinating thing, the subconscious mind. I mean, I mean, you could call it just a terminology, right? Because we're talking about it so we can discuss it and explain it. But there, there's probably just one mind, and the conscious part, that's the part that we know about, things that we realize. The subconscious part is everything else, right? And it's always going on. But the subconscious mind is like the cliche iceberg. We see the conscious mind, that's above the water. The subconscious mind, much bigger, much more powerful. I mean, this is a real-time discussion. So Ben and I may disagree, which is fine. But I believe that the most powerful beliefs that we have, we're not even aware of. and were formulated in our formative years, our younger years, but we don't even realize them. What do you think about that?
No, I 100% agree. That's what I tell clients pretty much in every session. I have a pretty standard way I work with people, but one of the biggest things that I've learned through my experience as a traditional therapist, and then through even my training as a coach. I mean, fun fact about my coaching, I got my coaching certification under Tony Robbins' program. So
Tony Robbins is the man.
He's the man. And he's also all about your BS, aka your belief systems or bullshit. So he really drives that home. But what really got me interested in Tony Robbins is that I've learned he's pretty much a master psychologist without even, going through it. He's better than most. And so I started really looking into this because my biggest modality back when I was doing traditional therapy was CBT and DBT, as well as positive psychology. These were
for those who don't know, that's cognitive behavioral therapy. And what's didactic is the other one?
Dialectical behavioral therapy.
Right.
They're very similar. And so these two things very heavily also focus on learning about your beliefs, your actions, your thoughts, your behaviors. Some of the most fun statistics that I know, for instance, is that the average is 95% of your day-to-day activities is done subconsciously. We also have roughly 80, I think it's 86,400. I know I said roughly, but that seems like a pretty accurate number. We have roughly 86,400 thoughts a day, and we are conscious of about 7% of those. So what, maybe 7 to 10,000 of those?
Right. And the vast majority of those thoughts are the same thoughts we had yesterday.
Correct. Exactly. And so the subconscious is very heavily just our beliefs, our behaviors, our emotions, our responses, our rules for life, the meaning we give to things, perception, mind, all of it's in the subconscious. And to your point, probably 99% of it started in your childhood. I always like to tell people this little analogy because it makes a lot of sense, where as a kid, you tried to walk. For the first time, you're trying to walk and you probably fell 1,000 times and never gave up. In fact, your parents probably encouraged you. They always told you, like, you could do it, you could do it. Our human spirit, our subconscious, in the essence of what it is, has always been to try and try and try again. However, at some point in our life, somebody started telling us otherwise. And then this
is the great human tragedy right here.
Yes, we adopt those beliefs where they're not our thoughts, right? Your parents never told you, hey, listen, you've fallen 1,000 times. You suck at walking. Stop. Go sit in a wheelchair. You're not a walker. Come on. What are you doing? They've never done that. And so you always believed, because you believed it in here, and I'm pointing to my heart, you believed it in here that you could do it, and you had encouragement from outside sources. But somewhere as we grow up along the way, that encouragement turns into criticism, and that criticism then shapes our beliefs, and other people's voices get twisted and become our own. So every negative thought and belief is, yes, it's programmed into you, especially at a younger age, from someone you believed in or loved or admired. And then it became, which is really what makes it hard for us to get over, it becomes our thought, our voice, our belief. And so, yes, you're 100% right. The programming's, it's a long-standing program that we run.
Absolutely. Now, you're a therapist then now, and I'm a coach. Well, I'm a personal development coach, was a life coach. I'm not even a coach anymore. I'm really just an entrepreneur. I'm the head of it. I have a technological coaching company. So, and that's what I have now. But, and I'm a practitioner of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. For me, and I've been in this field of personal development and proceeding this self-help for a long time. And periodically, invariably, I always had this consideration that I should get into it proper, like you are, become a therapist, or go get a degree in psychology. And I always not poo-pooed it, but said, no, I'm not now. But it was constant, it was reoccurring. So a couple of years ago, I finally decided not to have that recurring thought anymore and not weigh it out, every 2 years, because I realized, I decided that as much as I love psychology, and matter of fact, it's my favorite subject, and just as you alluded to about Tony Robbins, a coach has to be a practical psychologist, even though he doesn't have the degree. That's what a coach is. He's a psychologist without a degree, and that's me, right? But I decided that I could help or reach a lot more people as an entrepreneur. And make an impact in their life if I had such influence or effect with my business, rather than going the psychology route in terms of college and degrees. But psychologists, therapists, and coaches, two sides of the same coin. Indeed, you're both. That's gaining in popularity with therapists now to become also a coach. And the way I see it is therapy is helping a client reconcile with the past, and coaching is helping them get what they want in the future. That's the way I see it. What do you think about that?
I think it's similar. I think the way that I always try to explain it is, and what I was about to say is my explanation is similar to yours. I believe, for instance, when I try to pitch my service to someone, right? And I don't actually believe in selling. I'm all about kind of like ethical sales. So whenever people approach me about coaching, I'm never going to push them or attack their pain points or anything like that. I always just see how I could provide value. And if somebody likes it, they do it, right? And so the way I always try to kind of just explain what I do, because I think people even get confused. It's like, so are you doing therapy? Or are you doing coaching? What are you doing? And I'm like, I do it all. I think that the reality is that both therapy and coaching are phenomenal, and they both have shortcomings. Too many coaches have trouble with taking people into their past. They either feel unqualified or they feel like they don't know how to do it. And then too many therapists don't know how to push their clients hard enough. And that's really where they achieve lots of change. So I've kind of broken it down to say, I give this hybrid service where I play 3 people in your life. And I learned therapy is about meeting the client where they're at and seeing what their standards are for life, how they've programmed themselves, their belief systems, all of these things, like understanding the client where they're at. Then you need a mentor. You need somebody to teach you. It's been shown and proven you can't change a belief system if you don't have new info to change it with. So I need to mentor. I need to teach you, give you the tools, the knowledge, the equipment, everything you need. And then I come in as your coach. And as I mentioned before, the difference between a therapist and a coach is this. The therapist meets you where you're at, and the coach challenges you to raise your standards for life and gets you to a new place. I think this, and this is what I'm kind of fighting for, this is my mission, is to essentially get the world to see it shouldn't be coach versus therapist, it should be a combination service. I think that this is really the hybrid that the world needs to give people better changes. So many of the ethics and old codes of therapy, I feel out of date, they're archaic. I don't think they really help people. And I think they discourage connection, which is what you need for great changes to be had. And same thing with coaching. I think coaching is phenomenal because it's so unregulated. You can do whatever you want. But I think that's also where a few of the shortcomings come, is because with that unregulation, some people don't know how to achieve the change in a stronger and more professional way. So I'm looking to always unfortunately preach about this hybrid service as to how I think this is something that we really need in the world. And it's hopefully a new age thought that comes to fruition.
I love it. And you used the word new age. I used to make fun of new ages up until the time I realized that I was one. But what you said sounds to me like an absolute bullseye. Absolute. I mean, you could not be more dead on than what you just described. And I totally commend you, sir. That's fantastic. And you said a key word that I really liked: raising standards. I talked about, and mentorship, as part of the third person that you like to come at a client with. I'm a recovered addict, alcoholic, been sober a very long time. And and I had issues with the 12-step fellowship. It's 12-step fellowship is fantastic, but it's ripe with pitfalls. But what I would tell people quite often who wanted my advice, I would say, listen, just raise your standards. Start raising your standards. Start making this behavior unacceptable to you and go for a standard that's better than that, a better behavior. That's the simplest. I can't put it more simple than that. Start with that and you'll start operating better. And that's, why do I say that? Because that's what I did in my life, you know, and that's that's a primary reason how I transcended the 12-step fellowship. I haven't needed a meeting in a long time because I didn't want to, while trading meetings for drugs and society's favorite drug, alcohol, is a good trade. It's still just a trade. You know, I wanted to stand on my own feet wherever I was. And I had that in mind. I wanted to do a lot with my life. I had great hopes, great aspirations and goals. And I didn't want to be just a meeting maker. I wanted to be someone who could really go far, independently, sovereign, and all that. So I think, man, you're sounding awesome, my friend. And I also like to say another thing. You know, you work with CBT, or you used to. You know, I'm an NLP practitioner, which, you know, basically NLP is a form of psychology that focuses on how we think as opposed to all the other parts of psychology. And CBT, they say, I've heard many times, is the psychology side of NLP, you know, which has a real degrees in real curriculums in colleges. Well, NLP is not like that at all, you know, and it's about, you know, becoming logical and really going with cause and effect and stuff like that. So I want to say one other thing about NLP, and you talked about some of the other things that are facets related to it, working with others. And by the way, you know, you talked about, I said that was a mentor. You know, I used to mentor people in the rooms of the fellowship, but working with others, NLP, I found that with NLP, working on yourself is very difficult. And often the effects are not lasted. Working with others as an NLP practitioner, I found to be much more successful. You know, you're a therapist, you're a coach, you're a mentor. People, you know, when you're in the picture, it's hard to see the picture. You know, you're too involved emotionally, and it's hard to step out of yourself to see the bigger picture. So working with another, it's been my observation, my experience, is far more effective than working on yourself, more or less. I mean, I'm a person that strives for personal development. I'm all about evolution, and I'm striving to be enlightened. But you know, I find I get the best results when I work with others, one way or the other. When they work with me, when I work with them. What do you think about that?
I think that one, at least with NLP, so I'm not yet certified in NLP. That's actually one of my goals, is to go for my next cert in that. I love NLP. I've studied it a lot. I'm unofficially certified because I actually do a lot of NLP techniques with my clients.
Fantastic.
My opinion of NLP is, I would say, I think it's definitely got roots in CBT, but I also find, at least from my traditional training, I think it's more rooted in DBT, which is the dialectical behavioral therapy. And the only reason I say that is because, from my understanding, and I would love, you know, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I don't know enough about it. I'm not even certified. But what my understanding is of NLP is that what makes such powerful changes in NLP is that it really hits on the emotions, right? And we know that emotion is energy in motion, and the way you physiologically embody your emotion and all of these different things are going to be very impactful to your behaviors and your thoughts. In DBT is actually very heavily involved in getting people through emotional regulation and emotionally stressful situations. And so using different types of like visualization techniques or ways to pull and detensify, or I think I just made a word up, take away the intensity
right.
of the emotions that someone is struggling with, is heavily rooted in DBT, where CBT is a little bit more of that like logical side, like, well, why are you doing this?
Right.
And then what's the behavior, etc. So I think I have that kind of thought and feedback on NLP, and I think it's phenomenal.
No, you've got a good grasp on it, my friend. Very good grasp. You know, the emotions. Obviously, humans are emotional creatures, and any person knows that. But you know, the thing is that we don't realize how important state management is, because our state affects us probably more than anything. You could be the most effective person in the world. Unless you're highly disciplined, you're not going to do what you need to do if your state is prohibitive. So you
Right.
want the proper state for whatever the endeavor or task is or situation.
For sure. And I think too, like to the other point that you said about being able to help others. I think, there's always been that saying, right? Those who can't do, teach.
Yeah.
And I used to really heavily believe in that because I had my own issues. But I think that as I've gotten older, I think it's a little of a combination. I don't know if we could always do the things that we teach. I always try to strive to do it because I think if we really think about what gets clients great results is this. It's the absolute certainty and the belief that you could get those results, that the process.
Yes.
And I think one of the best ways, if you're somebody who's struggling with this right now to even think about, is one of the best ways to help somebody is to be absolutely certain you can. To be absolutely certain you can is to
Definitely.
do it within yourself.
Definitely. And that will, they'll know that, they'll feel it, they'll sense it, they'll
Yep.
perceive it. And if they doubt you, they'll doubt themselves, they'll doubt the outcomes. Very good.
Correct.
Let's take a quick moment to hear, to get it for a commercial break, and we'll be right back with Vincent Infante.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Prophysioio. What if there was a self-improvement program truly personalized to you, that knew and cared for you deeply? That whatever was going on in your life adapted for you perpetually. Visit www.prophysioio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where you can start a program that will always suit you, considering all the pressures and nuances of your life.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. We're talking with Vincent Infante. We're talking about subconscious mind. We're talking about a number of things related to it. Let's get to my next question. Vin, how does one identify habits and patterns?
Okay, so there's actually a really cool technique I could give for anyone who's listening who actually wants to take the challenge. Right. I got this a long time ago out of a CBT book, so it's been used, tried, and tested, and I've done it myself, if you remember from a few seconds ago.
Very good.
So there's actually a way to understand the ways you programmed yourself, and anyone can do this. It's actually very easy, and it doesn't take a lot of insight. What you do is you keep a journal for 30 days, but not the traditional journal that you're thinking of. There should be virtually no detail in this journal. See, we are, again, patterned, and we are acting out of habits. So to understand your habits is to just see the patterns, because you can't break a habit without awareness. So the task in this journal is to write down moments of your life that happen with the emotion that comes up. Now, a lot of people tend to journal and they tend to go into great detail. This isn't that, because if you do that, you're taking away from the ability to just focus on your patterns and your habits. Because what we start doing, if you give too much detail, is you're going to start justifying or finding reasons as to why that behavior was acceptable. We're not looking for acceptable or unacceptable behaviors here. With this specific task, we're looking to just understand your pattern. So write something as simple as like Tuesday, guy cut me off, got pissed. Wednesday, girlfriend didn't listen to me, got pissed. You'll do this for about a month and you'll start seeing that there are certain emotions that come up most for you. This we could describe as your emotional home. That's like your most familiar emotion that you constantly go back to, but you'll also see other patterns. You'll notice maybe your prominent emotion is anger in 30 situations you wrote down in that month. And you'll also see other things. You might see that you're happy a lot, or whatever the case may be. So this is actually one of the best ways that I've found to really get a good handle. The issue is that a lot of people don't want to do this because the time requirement is 30 days of journaling every day in lots of circumstances. However, if you really do this, I can virtually promise and guarantee you will understand your patterns after that time frame.
This sounds like an extremely useful thing. Patterns they may be everything. I mean, and basically, if you're doomed to repeat your patterns, and if they're not getting what you want, you're not getting the outcomes you want. If you don't change them, you're screwed. you are screwed. You must change your patterns. And where they come from, just the thing that we started this conversation with, your subconscious mind. That's where they are. You don't even think about them. You just do them, and you'll do them and do them. As a coach, I would, well, not all the time. Most of the time with clients, they had specific issues, and I helped them, go from dysfunctional to functional. But and patterns are related to that, certainly. But basically, a pattern is a way of acting or maybe feeling. And, as a coach, though, I can distill a success person, a person who is a success, or a person who is a failure in this simple description, is that a person who is a success has enough success patterns and a minimum of failure patterns, and a failure personality is the opposite. and a pattern is a habit. They're synonyms, practically identical. So we've got the challenge that we all have is to reduce the unwanted habits and increase the wanted habits. That's the challenge that we all have. And I'm challenged with it daily. Habits, I want habits, but and how long is it? They used to say that if you do something 30 days to make a habit, you know what? I found that it takes longer than that. How long does it take? As long as it takes. If you really want to do it, you're going to keep doing it until you don't have to think about it anymore, and you just do it. That's when you've arrived.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I actually read maybe it was like a Mythbuster article. It wasn't actually from Mythbusters, but they talked about the whole 30 days to break a habit.
No. At first it was 3 weeks. Then they started expanding that to 30 days.
Right.
And,
yeah. They always have like this newer, guys, it only takes 30 days. There was the study, and they found that essentially, as they study people and how long it takes to break and form habits, they found the highest performing people in this study. I don't remember the number of people they had, but it was a good enough study that seemed like there was validity in it. They had the highest performing people formed habits in 13 days, the highest forming 13 days. And then they found the people that took the longest to form habits were about 183 days. That's half a year. And so it's very interesting, because one of the things that I could think of that actually helps with habits and breaking or forming them is the amount and the intensity. So if Tony, if you were to do a podcast every single day for a month, let's just say, right, 30 days, your ability to speak on a podcast would be phenomenal. If the average person did one podcast a month, right, one compared to your 30, you would have virtually a 30x experience in a month that it would take them how many years to get. Exactly. So you see, the best way
to do 3 years to match my 1 month, and they would not get the benefit still, because the frequency is a critical thing. I have found. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I was just going to finish with the aspect of what you went into is right. Basically that your intensity and your frequency is going to build that up so quickly that your skill will skyrocket, because you're closing what I call closing gaps. You're making 3 years of experience in 1 month. That's how people get lucky and explode out of nowhere, right? They become the overnight success because they practice so intensely for a year, where it takes people 10 years of barely any effort. So go ahead. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Absolutely. I totally concur. And I'll add this too. And you already alluded to it or implied it with your scenario, is that frequency is great, but consistency is the icing on. It's more than the icing on the cake. It's the platinum. The more consistent I am in anything, the better I am at it. The quicker it happens. The quicker you want to be successful, be consistent. You'll get it much more quicker. Because as you said, the 30 days daily, as opposed to the 3 years or once a month. Persistence is the key to success. The other side of that is learning. You got to learn. If you keep on doing what doesn't work or it's not getting the result, you've got to learn what you've got to change at least, and hopefully, do something that's functional. But that aside, consistency is the thing of the champions. That's the entity of champions. That's what they have. They practice, they work out, they do their tests, they do their business consistently. And that's a primary reason why I haven't become that millionaire yet. I created a virtual coaching program. You're a coach, I'm a coach. I love coaching. And I've created a virtual coaching program that's going to transform self-help. And it's a virtual coaching program. It's called Prophysioio. And the thing is that if we're not consistent in what we do, then what happens invariably is that we get distracted and then we stop even doing it. We peter out. So we lose momentum, and then we stall, and then we get distracted, and it's like, what am I going to do next? So then we give up on that dream, and that adds to us. As a therapist, let me hear what your feedback is on this. I have found that perhaps the primary cause of stress, and certainly we have stresses for our needs, right, and to take care of our families and loved ones. When that's in jeopardy or uncertain, that adds to our stress. But I have found, I'm a single guy, so that doesn't happen to me too much. I have found that the greatest increaser of stress for people is not completing something, not finishing something, not doing something they wanted to do. It just stays in us. It stays in our cells. I never did that. You don't think about it, but where does it go? And that thing we mentioned at the beginning, the subconscious mind. Another thing I didn't finish, another thing I started, and that was the end of it. And it just sits with us. It sits with us, we stew in it. That's been my interpretation. What do you think about that, Vin?
I think that stress comes from kind of the last word you said right there, interpretation. It comes from our perceptions. Yeah. So I in the scenario you gave, I would look at it as perhaps the stress isn't coming from like the person didn't do the thing. Yeah. I think the stress comes in because they're not living up to, one, the standards, and two, they don't have an identity developed. Like, the only reason we do anything in life is because of the fact that we have an identity for it. Totally. If you're a successful person, you identify as successful, you're going to do things that make you successful. So you don't have to stress about not doing things because that's not who you are. There's no worry in there. I think that's where like people have that perception that if they do something or they don't do something, it's in line with that identity or it's not. And so the further we are from our personal identity or who we should be, the more kind of stressed we feel. I think the more in line we feel, the better we feel. Like for me, I mean, I could even talk from my personal experience. I struggled a lot myself. I struggled with anxiety, depression, panic attacks, suicidal thoughts. My therapist wanted to put me on medication. I refused. And everything that came from that, all of my stress, all of those panic attacks and mental breakdowns I was having were actually because I wasn't developing my identity. I was pushing away and not coming to acceptance with who I was as a person. And I was trying to change myself without actually changing myself. And so all of this stress came from my perception of how painful life was for me. But when I finally took my identity back and I realized who I was as a person, the person I've been trying to bury for years and years, and it doesn't even have to be anything significant. I'm not even saying like I came out of the closet because that never happened to me. The reality is I just didn't like who I was. And so I buried that person. And when I finally accepted that person, all of my stress honestly went away. I stopped going to therapy. I didn't need it, honestly. I didn't need the medication. I created a better outlook for my life. And I was able to just transform in one moment, one decision to be more of who I believed I could be. And so I think when we get stressed, it's really a big piece of like, you're out of alignment. You don't know yourself. You don't know what you want. You're struggling. Like procrastination is defense to being stressed. Laziness is defense to being stressed. But where do those things come from? What are you using that defense for? And so these are all there are all so many interpretations, so many ways that you could look at this. I mean,
well, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Identity is a critical thing. And I use that in coaching very much. You use a hierarchy of values or a hierarchy of change, and identity is at the top. Yeah, it's at the top. You can real simply ask a smoker, someone smokes cigarettes, how do they identify, as a smoker or as a non-smoker? They're going to tell you smoker. You say, listen, I don't want you to be a smoker anymore. I want you to think of yourself as a non-smoker. They'll say, but I'm not. And you'll say, exactly. Exactly. That's why you smoke, because you're a smoker, right? But let's take a quick moment to hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with Vincent Infante.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Prophysioio. Benjamin Franklin taught that leisure is the time for doing something useful, and that this leisure the diligent person will obtain, but the lazy one never. Visit www.prophysioio.io, that's Perficio.io, where you can transform your idea of leisure to make it actually add to your life.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. We're having a wonderful discussion with Vincent Infante, talking about all sorts of things about success and patterns. Let me ask straight out, Vin, how can we change our narrative? The narratives are things that we hear in our head, but how can we change it?
Question it. Nobody, this is the biggest part, right? This is the subconscious. We don't question our narratives. We don't ask good questions, and we just let it run wild. We think, and therefore, right? Who said this quote? I think, therefore I am, right?
I don't know.
It's an old quote. I don't remember who said it. But there was something that changed for me. It was actually something that Nietzsche had presented. Now, Nietzsche, for anyone who doesn't know, is a very, very famous writer, philosopher, therapist, all these things. And there was this one exercise that he talks about where he says, close your eyes and just observe your thoughts. Notice them. Just notice them. Don't do anything with them. Just see if there's thoughts there, if you could observe them. And then, everybody always says yes, because the reality is we can observe our thoughts. And then he said, notice that. Notice where are those thoughts coming from, and then notice who's observing those thoughts, which allows us to understand we are not our thoughts. So if you want to shift an identity, question your thoughts, understand where they're coming from, ask why are they here, what do I have to learn, and then ask a better question.
Absolutely. By the way, that's very NLP. NLP, by the way, 95% of NLP was not invented by Milpers. It's taken from people like Nietzsche. It's just codified, and that's a very NLP thing to do. And you mentioned that quote about I think, therefore I am. Most people, many people, it seems, think that their brain is what's in charge of them. What an incredible mistake this is. The brain is just the top organ of your neurological system. What's in charge, people, is your mind. That's what's in charge. And that's how you break patterns. That's how you create habits, because your brain wants you to do something over and over. It's already ingrained, right? It's literally, your habits literally can be found in the brain. But that's not what's in charge. Your mind is, you don't want to do that anymore. You decide not to, and then your brain's like, no, this is what I do. Well, you got to say to your brain, I'm in charge. You can say that literally, or you can say it in other ways, but you got to keep doing what you want to do until now you break that old habit and you make the new habit, whatever it is. And that may include, thinking better thoughts, as we're talking about changing the narrative. The narrative is very important. We are, as you said at the beginning, we are meaning making machines. We must make good meanings and decide, what things mean or how we want to change them. Otherwise, the patterns will just be in charge. Patterns will be in charge.
100%.
So do you have any other recommendations about changing our narratives? You want to just leave that one alone?
I think that's probably the best way to change a narrative. Honestly, I think even another way could be, and I'm sure you've already learned about this. It's also a big technique in traditional therapy is modeling, right?
Absolutely.
If you
NLP began with modeling. Modeling is critical.
And modeling is probably one of the best tactics, right? So not only asking the questions and questioning your thoughts and saying like, why am I thinking this way? Or what's the better thought? Asking who is it that you want to become? And then essentially trying isn't real. Essentially just going and doing what it is that successful person does. And it doesn't mean you're going to get the same results, but we know that modeling shows us an example of something we can achieve. And why that's so great is it does come back to the subconscious again, because the brain can't achieve anything it can't see first. And the subconscious brain doesn't understand the difference between reality and a thought. So if you're modeling after someone, you're tricking the subconscious brain into seeing a possibility, right? Like that's why visualization techniques are so powerful, because you could imagine yourself driving in a Lamborghini and your brain won't even know the difference. It's gonna be like, damn, it feels good driving in this Lambo. And then you wake up and your conscious brain is like, we don't have no Lambo here. And so if you want, a second technique is go model, find someone, see the possibilities so your brain can actually perceive and achieve.
in that virtual coaching program that I created, that's one of the things that the coach, it's an automated coach that really knows a person, tells the client. I call them client, by the way, which is client, which is what us coaches and therapists have, and student, because you're a student of self-help. It tells the client to get a mentor in the particular field that they're studying, because that is incredibly valuable. If you want to do something, find out someone who's done that thing and look at what they do, or ask them. But more often than not, they're not even aware of it. It's subconscious. So you got to pay careful attention. But mentors are where it's at, or, people that you can model, study, that's where it's at, man. Totally. Yeah. And there are all sorts of effective tools and strategies for modeling or changing narratives. Can you recommend any others?
Let's see. I got so many. I mean,
there are so many. There's so many in our tool. You know what? One thing I loved about coaching on the phone, which is what I did for years, is that I would study a client, assess them, and research all these methods and techniques that can approach the issues that they wanted and the outcomes they wanted. And I would write to have all on my desk. I have 20 papers on there, and I'd have them on my phone headset, and they would get incredible results. And sometimes I would say, "Oh my God, this shit really works," because I couldn't believe it. They're like, "What problem? I don't have that problem before. Like 10 minutes ago, you were crying about it," but they would think I was so smart because they didn't see me reading on the paper. But because you probably see people one-on-one, but I never did. I was always over the phone. I mean, I work with people one-on-one, but it was not the way I have my business set up. But I loved it, man, on the phone. And they think I'm so smart, but I'm just, I do my research and I'm prepared. Preparation, that's a critical key to success. People don't realize it. They think that, they see a successful person and they want to be, I want to be like this successful person. They don't see all the preparation, all the hard work that went into becoming a success. That's where it's at.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it takes, what is it? It takes a lot of time and effort to become an overnight success.
I never heard that. That is great. I love that. Man, this has been a fantastic discussion, Vince. I really appreciate it. I understand you also have a free offer for the audience.
Yes, I do. So you can either reach out to me over Instagram or LinkedIn or any of my social medias, and we'll set up what's called a free strategy call. So that strategy call is basically to see, one, if we're a good fit to work together, because it's not just about you choosing me. I have to choose you. I only want to work with specific clients. I know who I'm looking for. So if you're working with me, it's because we chose each other. And it's a time where we'll really see, aside from if we're a good fit, what you need help with, if I could be that person for you, or if I think somebody else would be a better fit. And so it's, it's about a 30-minute phone call or so, and we'll take a little bit of time, or as much time as we need to really just kind of go through it together.
Fantastic. And you got a website, vincentinfante.life.
Correct.
So,
yes.
That is Vincent, Vincent, Infante, Infant. .life, Life, not .com. So vincentinfante.life. Go there. If you're interested, check it out. Take Vincent up on his offer. Give him a call, give him an email, see if he's right for you, see if you're right for him, because I love that. You got to match. Sometimes I had a few clients that it was really a mismatch and it did not work out. But, I have a 90%, over a 90% success rate with my clients. But I would say that the ones that we didn't have good outcomes with, if I had perhaps spent more time on preparing, is that word again, and seeing if we were matched, probably my success rate would have been much closer to 100.
I could agree with that. I think that the biggest reason that I do that screening, so to speak, is really just because of the fact that you got to be coachable. Maybe at the moment you think you want it, but you're not ready, and that's fine too. Like, I think the only reason we wouldn't be a good fit is just because one of us isn't ready for the other person. And so it's just about always meeting people where they're at. I've had a few clients that I didn't help, and that was really because I didn't screen well. I didn't know if they were ready for it, and I took them on anyway. And that's why I've also become more selective, because I want to make sure it's not a waste of time and money, and that we both get the most out of it.
Excellent. And time is truly the most valuable thing we have. That's been for, the first course I have in Prophysioio, my virtual coaching program, is a financial course by Ben Franklin. And one of his main axioms is that time is the most valuable thing you have. Not money, time. The richest person in the world, the poorest person in the world, the thing that they have both that's most valuable is time. And so don't waste your time. For sage advice. I mean, you alluded to it and I'm confirming it. and so I know you're on social media. You're on Instagram at vin.infante. Is there anything else? Any other social media?
I'm on Instagram, yes, as Vin.Infante. As you said before, I have my website, which occasionally I do blog posts. I should get more frequent with that. I'm also on TikTok as Vin-Infante.
You're on that? That's
incredible. Yeah. Hey, listen, it's great. I get to do some fun. I do some funny, relatable therapy videos, and I also do like quick pieces of advice. Like I have a video about how to use journaling to change your life. Like, so there's a lot of great information on there. And you can also find me on LinkedIn as Vincent Infante.
Great. Now, do you have a final remarks for our audience?
I actually do. I would love to end with a quote. I am very big on quotes. Quotes do help guide and shape my life. I think everybody should have quotes. I've created in my own house, I have what I call as a quote board, where I just write down quotes that have inspired me, but more so quotes that I want to live by every day. One of my favorite quotes was from the greatest emperor of Rome, which is Marcus Aurelius.
By the way, I'm studying Stoicism right now. I have a protege, and we're studying the book, the Meditations, and we're making our own adaptation of it, which we're going to publish in the near future. So I love that. I love it, man. You're the man.
I'm a big fan of Stoicism. I have a great book right there. I'll show you after the call. But my favorite quote from him is to be tolerant of others and strict with yourself. And this is one of the golden rules that I've carried that has literally transformed my life, because I find that when you are compassionate with others and you are tolerant and you are understanding, you get so much more out of people. But to really get more out of your own life, you must be strict and hold yourself to a standard and raise your standards to not achieve less than you deserve. And it doesn't mean to beat yourself up, but it does mean to challenge yourself every day. And so that's one of my favorite quotes. I hope it serves everyone who's listening.
It's profound. It's profound. It's succinct. It's right there. Excellent stuff. Vin, you have been a most excellent guest. And I don't just say that because we're both Italian from Staten Island. And I was going to be a firefighter, but I was hungover the morning I was supposed to go. And then but I've been sober a long time now. But truly, you have been a most excellent guest. You have shared very valuable stuff. I highly recommend that anyone go check out your website or your social media. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. And I want to remind everyone listening that we're all responsible for ourselves and we can all use a little help. And with that, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you at the next podcast. Thanks a lot for joining us, Vin.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast, where insights, attitudes, and methods for success get illuminated. Learn what leaders and change workers have done and are doing now to create magnificent futures. Remember to visit our website at self-helpcoaching.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Self-Help Coaching Podcast.